What's happening?
Jersey makes a post, says Canada says they will remove tariffs if the U.S. does. So all of a sudden, this is
Mm,
what we want to
but
see.
w- but will the U.S. do that?
But
That's the
this is what
question,
we
right?
want to see. We want to see that at the very least, nations are willing to negotiate, not double down, not triple down like they've been threatening for the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks, acting tough on the screen. We want to see real solutions here. Like economies aside, markets aside, but people will suffer the most from this. Nations not working together. That's not a capitalistic society. We get our goods and items and trade from all over the world. So the second this is disrupted or heavily taxed for the sake of heavily taxing, either through dispute or disagreement, it doesn't help any economy. It doesn't help, most importantly, the people in the economy. And what we want to see is who's willing to be the bigger man and or woman. You never know these days, and is willing to just come to a conclusion, come to an agreement, some sort of let's stop escalating. Let's where can we work from? And that's what we want to see. Above all, priority, economics aside, cost of living aside, markets aside, this is what we want to see. And like I'm reading the comments as they come along, DB, like Packer Mad or Paker Mad says China restricts investment in the U.S. this morning. Again, I don't really think um, China has many cards to deal with. I don't think economically they're doing very well, and again, I see this more as an open threat. I expect quote unquote allies to respond better um, to their ally tariffing them. Right? I see China as more of like a competitor in terms of GDP and a lot of other sectors. So again, it's only natural for China to try and strong arm, but to restrict investment into the U.S. it seems very tyrannical, and that says a lot more about them than it says about the U.S. In my opinion. So again, let's see how it works out. But again, I'd want to see more. From the side of allies, NATO allies saying we want to squash this. We don't want to escalate with our ally, right? It's a different story when I consider non-NATO nations and NATO nations, right? So these are two things that you need to factor in as well. If you have any comments.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm going very neutral into the event. I've seen these headlines many, many times. Canada saying this, U.S. saying that. If they do this, we will respond like this. It's both positive and negative comments. I've seen politicians say if Trump puts the tariff on this, we will retaliate through this way, or if they take away tariffs, we will take them away. It's just headlines. I'm not interested in headlines. I want to see the numbers. I want to see what's happening, and then I can make a way around what that would mean for the markets. Always having in mind what happened in 2018, right? I'm not saying that something similar can happen today, but if you've been following my corner, you know what I'm talking about. But in 2018, because of tariff tensions, we had a 20% drop in the S&P 500. So far, the S&P 500 has dropped 10%, which is not considered bear market yet. It's just a normal correction. But again, as I said, if tariffs remain sticky, if they're high and broad, and if they sustain for a longer period of time, what makes me believe that we won't get a 20% drop on the S&P 500, right? So that's something I will expect if I don't see any resolution today. If I don't see any willingness, both from Trump and from trading partners, for negotiating a deal, right, and getting rid of these tariffs, or getting rid of partially getting rid of tariffs. So that's how I will see it. And speculating ahead of that, it's not my style. You know how I approach the market, and we're talking about politicians here. So how much can they be trusted, what they say and what they do? So I first want to see what's happening, and then I will come up with a more thorough analysis on how I see things. But that's just the nature of who I am as a trader and an investor. I like to stick to data. And I'm not as speculative as some might be. Maybe I should be in some cases, right? Could help me, but my approach has helped me a lot. So we will see. We'll see what happened today. But definitely, if expectations are met, and expectations of tariffs, right? If they met, I could see some relief in the markets, unless we get something very surprising that the market has not been able to price in yet, right? And that could be anything that's not been mentioned so far. And one of these options is also what you have said, with some form of a union between different trading partners that have grouped together to prepare a response to the United States. I haven't seen any headlines about that. Maybe if you have, you can share some link or something like that. I haven't seen anything about that, but it could be a logical option that could follow. But it's a lot of it could be's, and I don't like to talk about that. I know what to expect from certain options that can come, and I've just mentioned them. And what comes after that, I think it's something we can discuss next stream, I believe. But
Yeah,
of
and
course, I mean
it's
the if you think about it, no, it's not in the interest of any country that is heavily focused or reliant on exports to grow its GDP to have a long-lasting trading war. That's logical, right? Why would China want a trading war with the United States, or why would the EU zone want a trading war with the United States when the EU has also been increasing their exports to the United States in recent years, especially in industries like car exports. The EU is certainly leading among the global entities, so it's not really in the interest of any of their countries to have a trading war. But at the end, as I said, it will mostly depend on how stubborn countries are that are being imposed with the tariff, and what Trump really wants for the U.S. markets. I've said it many times. I mean, do you trust him when he says we want to weaken the dollar, we want to weaken the economy, or do you say
true.
he's bluffing? And he's just using that to 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 have a better position when negotiating. So I think that's the key. The key aspect that we need to consider. If it's that he's just using them as bargaining chips, of course he has to make it look like he's very serious about tariffs, right? Because if his trading partners would call the bluff, then what effect would that have in his negotiating, right? It wouldn't really have a big effect. But if he actually shows himself as being serious about these tariffs and serious about weakening the U.S. dollar, then I think he has a bigger negotiating position relative to his trading partners. So I think a lot of what ifs, if you see what I mean, right? A lot of unknowns. I personally don't like to bet too much against the unknowns. So I will see what happens, and when I see more, when I have more facts and more data, I think I can come up with a better. Um, I don't want to call it prediction because I don't like to predict the market, but a better analysis and a better outlook on the markets. But overall, I think Rego, maybe you see it differently, but let me know what you think. I think we are at a place in the market, which is very important because we're trying to make some form of a higher low, and that could be the range of trend market,
um
which has been in a downtrend. So that's something
I
to
mean,
consider as well before
the way this looks, it just
hitting new lows.
reminds you more and more of your typical BDC correction. It's that's usually typically um, very lackluster, very unconvincing, and takes a matter of days for months of bleeding to just be engulfed and trap everybody. It usually looks a lot like this. You know, I want to say it looks convincing enough, but if I know anything about BDC, it's never that easy. Um, so although the structure does look good here, what I've also seen time and time again is something look like this before doing something like that. There's so many ways for this to go, and timing it is going to be extremely, extremely stressful and difficult. So which is why I've stuck to my overall belief that if you're just overall buying this area over here without any expectations on when or how or where or why it'll do what it does, but every typical correction I've always seen does sort of the same thing. When you look at this range, this was a big, big correction cycle. Is one of the longest ones I think we've ever endured. And as you can see, every time it looked like we were in the clear, we just kind of broke down again. Every time it looked like we were in the clear, we just broke down again. Every time we were in the clear, and then it just got tighter and tighter until it finally created its expansion. From a market structure, I want to say it still looks completely fine. From an intraday perspective, I want to say it's been rather brutal. I won't be the one to argue with anybody at this point. It's been a really brutal couple months trading. Otherwise, it's been, in my opinion, for the phase and part of the cycle you're in, it's been otherwise normal and completely expected. Um, but in terms of intraday movement, I feel like that has gotten much tougher this cycle around. It's becoming more sophisticated, this market. And previous models are no longer as effective, right? So from a main structure standpoint, you are in a 30% drawdown. You have Bitcoin dominance about to make new highs. Everything checks out as it should. Probably not what people want to hear, but it's what needs to happen. Um, I've stuck to the belief and idea that this is not a market top. It's not a cycle top either. It's simply the first harsh and aggressive sell-off that sees this into new highs rather quickly. It's months and months and months of selling, um, met with just a few weeks of buying, that could change this scenario completely, right? So if we were lower on dominance, if we were way higher on USDT dominance, I would agree that maybe this is the market cycle top, but I am not a believer of that in the slightest. I think a lot of the sentiment is definitely surrounding this, and it's been the same as every other corrective cycle, the same sort of shake and bake, the same sort of distribution. But what's most important is how much we've drawn down and how much that hasn't changed, right? So it's the same as I've always seen. So from a daily structure, from an analysis perspective, I can't flip my bias. If you had a bearish bias, which we did, right? Not a bearish bias, but we had like a range bearish bias at 109 or 106, sorry, where we were expecting to range. Now to break down out of the range is a bit out of my forecast, but nonetheless, nobody was calling for 140, 150K without ranging a bit. The only sudden shock to me was the break down out of the range so quickly. But other than that, it's been a 30% correction environment until further notice. On our number one market cap that holds the most, um, um, what the fuck am I trying to say, man? On our number one market cap that holds the most influence in our industry, it's been otherwise fine. Um, Typical, common, seen every single cycle. Nothing to be alarmed of just yet. So keep that in mind. I don't know about your thoughts, but yeah.
I personally think on a higher time frame, as long as we hold above the previous all-time high, I don't have big signals to be concerned. Drop below that, then I would be more cautious.
Yep.
But as long as that holds, I think it doesn't look too bad structure-wise. Actually, I was looking at the 3-day chart on Bitcoin today, and I was telling myself, "What correction, man? It's just brutal. Of course, it's a correction, right? It's a 30% drop. Um, it's not something that suggests to me yet that the entering bear market, at least not for Bitcoin, and I do even decoupled heavily with
Oh,
the rest of the market. So I would even go that far as I would say that even if we would get a bear market, I don't expect Bitcoin to drop similar way dropped previous cycles. So we usually had Bitcoin dropping 75 to 80%, while alts 90 to 95%, something like that. Even if we would get something like a bear market, I would expect Bitcoin to hold stronger compared to the rest of the market. We can see signs of that already here and in the last few weeks. And that is because now we got big players holding and buying Bitcoin, right? So I wouldn't expect a 75% drop for Bitcoin in a bear market, but that's a discussion for another stream maybe. But yeah, a higher time frame, I think 73, 74, that area is very interesting. Will we front run it? Also possible. Will depend on what's happening today and what will happen with stock markets, because it is a high area of interest, right? Because everybody talks about the previous all-time high area. So if the market turns bullish in terms of the macro turning more risk on, I could even imagine that we can front run that area at some point, and that 76K will actually be the lows for now. But interesting opening in stock markets. We're actually we opened with a gap, but now we're buying back. Already got above 5,600 S&P 500, which is interesting to see.
It's disgusting how well correlated BDC is to any movement on SPX right now. It's disgusting,
Yeah,
disgusting. Like this is
absolutely.
DB. I'm so bored. I'm so bored, man. If I wanted to be a legacy trader, I'd just go to legacy markets, man. This is so boring, dude.
You can
What
you
the
can trade
fuck, man?
altcoins, man.
Yeah, just open
Being
perpetual
so
shorts to zero. Yeah, that's what I could do. But I like to think of being flat on alts is my version of shorting. You know, I don't do any damage to the
you
market.
know,
But
it's
what?
it's logical, right? Because now you have a BTC ETF, for example. You have large corporations buying Bitcoin, and what I've personally noticed is that the ETF behavior is 100% aligned to what stock markets do, right? So when stock markets are dropping, people drop their BTC ETFs. When stock markets are rising, people buy Bitcoin ETFs. So naturally, Bitcoin will be more correlated to stock markets than in previous cycles. And that's not necessarily the case with altcoins, which is also quite obvious, I think.
I mean, you know, alts haven't had a narrative for since the start. Since the start, anything that has been gained on their end is nothing more than the inflows of money you've seen through. Um, I mean, we could take a look at the Ethereum ETF inflows, and I think it's for like 2 weeks straight. There's been zero. It's just it's not in they're not in the same realm. Like right now, they're just not. And in order to every alt cycle, right, has always come from the overwhelming appreciation of Bitcoin and the speculation that diversifies afterwards, right? So you know, in many ways, this is just like any other cycle. New narratives are formed, new sources of money find its way into the market, but nonetheless, it always goes the same way, right? Most alt cycles are bred through once again an overwhelming appreciation on BDC, which raises all boats or raises the tide for all boats. That's how it's always been. That's how it'll always be. And again, if you believe you're in the first phase of the market where again I think Bitcoin is still appreciating and finding its true value post halving, is because again that's a mathematical equation, right? It's a the halving is no coincidence. It's a mathematical equation. So it's still in my opinion in the process of finding its true value post 4 year halving, and it's only after that valuation has been determined, which I don't think again is 109K. I think it's much higher than that. Then you will begin to see the true speculation into alts, right? And there's a lot of room for them to go from here. That should be considered optimistic to people. I know a lot of people, myself included, mistimed a lot of pairings, but nonetheless, um, the prices you have bought over the past year, assuming I am right on what Bitcoin has to do next, will be considered a joke in the future. You know, at the peak of its parabola, like I mean, you've had a really long time to buy here, right? And of course, everybody is very discouraged and very low sentiment. But again, if Bitcoin does what I need it to do, everything that follows afterwards, the aftermath or the ripple effect from that happening will give you a really clean
I
and
think
that's
I think I personally think that the macro does play a huge role in altcoin rallies, right? I've said it before. Like, what does an what does an alt season actually mean, right? It means that DB, maybe not Rego, but DB as a trader, he feels more comfortable to put his money into very highly speculative stuff, right? And when there's a lot of uncertainty, the uncertainty started with inflation rising, Powell saying, we might not cut interest rates the way we expected. That was in December. Now we have more uncertainty because of recession speculations. More recent speculations include stagflation. I don't know if you've read about that, but where people basically expect lower economic growth because of tariffs while inflation is rising, right? So naturally, when prices go higher and people expect unemployment to increase, they fear about their jobs and their confidence is on the economy and stock markets is low. Um, what is their willingness to invest into highly speculative stuff, right? Into altcoins? I would say it's very low, right? So we have to have more certainty about global markets. We have to have more certainty about the U.S. market, the U.S. economy. People have to feel confident have to feel confident on all these matters before we can see an actual higher time frame rotation. I'm not talking about these 20, 30, 40% relief rallies from heavily oversold areas. I'm actually talking about an uptrend on altcoins like we had from November 5th to December 6th, right? Something like that, like weeks and weeks and weeks of uptrend only. People, I don't see how people would feel that comfort right now to speculate heavily into altcoins unless something drastically changes with the macro. And I'm not saying it won't, I think it can. We've seen that in 2018. Will that include more pain before we actually see that reversal? It could be, right? One thing that we do know is that after the 20% drop of the S&P 500 in 2018, we have seen a huge rally in stock markets with a little pause, which was due to the corona pandemic, right? But that was an extraordinary event. And I don't think stocks would have dropped that way if we wouldn't have COVID. But we have really seen a huge rally, right? Especially going towards the end of the term of Donald Trump's first term. So I do think that can still happen. We can still see a shift in the macro, but it could also mean that short term we could see some pain and we could see lower levels. That's always possible. And your goal will be to pay attention to the macro, to know when exactly to pull the trigger, when to not over risk, when to risk a bit more, and be aware that we're still at a very uncertain environment, right? But if prices go to levels that can be attractive, I think it's worth speculating on a very way better period in a few months from now. I think that's what I gotta say regarding this matter.
Um, One thing I want to add here is a lot of people are going to blame GDP growth, slowing of it. A lot of it will be blamed on tariffs, which I think maybe in the short term, the immediate short term might be true. But longer term, I don't see how that hurts them more, assuming everything has to be built in their own country and they're paying zero um, to get that to happen. So maybe immediate short term might have some immediate effects and impact on the market, but I think the real issue to GDP growth mostly has to be surrounded um, by potentially the deportations that are taking place, right? Because um, you have a lot of criminal spending, right? So I think that plays a big role, right, in economics as well. I think it happened in El Salvador, right, where for the first quarter or two quarters, as they cleaned up their streets, economic growth slowed down quite a bit, um, but it reverted back just as quickly, right? So I think that's an angle to take in as well, right? Um,
Yeah, I think short term, it will. I mean, if they sustain, right? Assuming that they sustain and they're put into place and they remain there, I think short term we can expect a lower GDP because the way tariffs can lower U.S. GDP is by increasing costs for customers and businesses, right? When trade is reduced, and then if we get retaliation measures from other countries that can add to that effect. So short term, I do think that the concerns are somewhat based. Long term, it depends, right? If the U.S. is able to bring production and substitute for the exports for the imports, then yeah, it could have a positive effect on GDP, but that takes some time, right? So in the short term, I think it's quite plausible to speculate on a lower GDP and naturally higher unemployment if tariffs are maintained. And this is a very important aspect because we have to say it. If they're maintained, then yes, we can expect a slowdown of the economy. But if they're completely abandoned, then we don't have to have this discussion. And we just know it. This was to push the political agendas, straighten things up in trading, and
are we missing headlines or something? Am I? just to double check. I mean, I again, this felt more like obvious than ever. This is
Mm,
obviously the same TWAP buyer, by the way. Same
I mean,
aggression, same levels of
stocks are
operation.
stocks are increasing a bit after opening.
Yeah,
S&P
like bro, like
500 is
everybody, like the thing is, like everybody and their moms know about the tariffs now. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't like again. I really think we've had you know I don't think it's too early to tell there, but I think we've had 2 months to speculate on this, and obviously people didn't like it. Um, I guess we just gotta wait till the press conference. I think that's what matters the most. But really, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if we rip today. Like it wouldn't at all. Like
not 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 at all. But on the other hand, you know, you pumping straight into the event and then getting something surprising could
yeah,
also lead them to a sell.
I
So
don't like
it's a
I
bit.
don't like the first move for the first 30 minutes. It's the same way when we nuked yesterday. I assumed that's a fake out. Just like today, I'm kind of feeling like such an aggressive move like we're seeing right now is usually a fake out. Um, volume's already lower than yesterday, off the open, off the rip, and it's most probably going to start decreasing now. So let's see. I'm not a fan of big moves this early in the open, but at the same time, we did gap down quite a bit, right? Like we did gap down. So let's see
Yeah,
what happens. It's gonna be a tough day, guys. It's gonna be a tough day. A lot of
that's super
volatility today.
interesting.
At least that's what I'm assuming a lot of volume today. It's just the only thing that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
will be under
far,
fundamentals. If you have like questions or something, I will probably be updating on the fundamentals throughout the event. So if you're interested in the discussions, you can just join that channel.
uh, if anybody has questions for the last 10 minutes, because we've been talking our ears off, tariff this, tariff that, tariff afan cool. If anybody
Yeah,
has
yeah.
anything else that they want covered or discussed, now would be the time to do it. I mean, a question non macro related, let's hear it.
When Bitcoin all-time high.
When alt season or when phase two. I already know it's coming.
When all see.
I can read you all like books, bro. What's up with BTC blocks and transaction IDs so low? It's most probably because Bitcoin is more expensive to mine than before, and pretty much that's usually the case. Usually that hash rates are extremely high or low, one or the other. I'm not the most savvy when it comes to mining, but usually whenever like rewards are slow, is because mining's expensive and people turn off their miners, so it requires more work to confirm a single transact. That's usually the recipe, right? So that's what I mean. Like when it starts getting so expensive and BTC is not appreciating, we kind of hit like and that's usually what can raise a price because it needs to reward the miners, right? 5 minutes is not bad though. That's 5 minutes is usually pretty good. Yeah. Then that goes based to what I said regarding mining probably costing a shit ton. All right. Anything else while we watch BDC rip on the open here? Two candles in a row. Very, very similar TWAP, by the way. Same. Exact same thing.
I've personally covered everything I had regarding the macro. So if there's any question or comment, feel free to share it.
GME or Sailor? Ooh. How about both? Like we need unity here. Bitcoin's for everybody. Bitcoin's for everybody. Don't care if you're a government. Don't care if you're an entity. Don't care if you're a corporation. How you want to use it is your prerogative. That's the point of it being for everybody. If it's not a peer-to-peer solution for them, and it's not a peer-to-peer solution for them, you know, you could always choose to buy it
Yeah,
off them. You could always choose to buy it before them, right? So again, this is a race between big entities that can raise billions and billions of dollars, or you, the people
Yes.
that buy little bits at a time. Is today
It
tariff
doesn't
day? It
just
is.
have to, it doesn't have to be just GME or Sailor, right? Don't forget that other
Oh, oh my
people
God!
were
It's going to, guys.
buying.
You are in the early stages of a gold
It doesn't
rush,
really matter
a digital gold rush.
because
Like you will see. Okay, the thing to keep in mind here, right, is strategy was on the brink of fucking total bankruptcy. GameStop was on the brink of total bankruptcy. This may save them. When other corporations, when other nations see the effects that it'll create a digital gold rush. Like it's going to get silly before you could blink. It just right now it doesn't seem that way, but it will get crazy. It will get crazy. I hope everybody remembers this conversation. Like so it doesn't matter GME or Sailor. Eventually it'll be the US getting involved. And that's when it's really going to start getting messy, you know? But you're in the start of a what I call a digital gold rush. Like we're very close to it. Metaplanet, who the fuck's Metaplanet? Oh, you asked me. Oh man, this is why I have to read comments as they go down. Who do I think is T-Wopping? I don't know. It's too aggressive to be Sailor. Sailor usually buys on the weekends. Doesn't usually buy market open rips, you know?
yeah, I was about to say that, but it doesn't matter. Like, what do you do with this information if it's GME or Sailor? It doesn't matter, right?
No, it just
It's
adds
not.
to your belief that if another four companies decide to propose because this is what they're doing, right? They're proposing offerings. It's not like they're taking their it's not like they're doing what Apple has or Amazon has, where they're sitting on like 7 billion of excess funds and they choose to buy BDC with that. No, they're raising funds through convertibles. Like, in other words, essentially they're printing money out of thin air and they're buying something extremely scarce with it. That is the main takeaway from this, is that they're converting some sort of bond or promise to buy something super scarce with money that is otherwise infinite. That is the real kicker here, which is why it's like we couldn't have been surprised when Apple voted no on buying, BDC with their own reserves. But if they were to offer a convertible note or some sort of thing to do so, that money would get raised in an instant because it's a no-brainer, right? So that's the real takeaway here, is that first and foremost, Sailor, no matter how much he buys, always seems to convert and raise funds in a matter of 24 to 48 hours, which is insane. And GameStop, which is an otherwise bankrupt company and obsolete by all stretch of the imagination, manages to raise 1.4 billion in a matter of days. Like these are insane things to consider. Right? Because there are otherwise companies that do nothing. They will be recognized as companies right now that will do nothing other than buy and hold BDC. And their performance will matter a lot to speculators, investors, and even other corporations that have a keen eye on this, right? So it's the trickle down effect that we're looking for here, not the immediate impact. We're looking at how do I explain it? We're looking at like the what this could imply for the long term, and that's how you have to see it. Look at this direct correlation, DB. Look how lame this is.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm personally updating a lot on the S&P 500 because it matters so much for our market.
So boring, bro. What am I watching, man? At least the volume's been good. Volume's been good. It looks like it wants to continue.
There's,
Three.
there's a very interesting diagonal trend line that is being retested on Bitcoin right now. I'm not a big fan of diagonal meme lines, but it's been rejecting of this trend line for a few times now. So very
Talking
interesting.
about this one.
If you look on the daily, you will see it more
I could see it
like a
on the
more.
M15. I could see it right here. I know exactly what it's
Yeah, yeah,
rejecting. It's looking just like
exactly. Yeah,
this. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, something
If I
like
go on
that.
the
Exactly.
daily, it looks like this, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah, yeah. Very, very interesting.
Haha.
This is where
Look
it
at that.
rejected last. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why I again, like, I could see it doing like the May 2021 thing there, where it just kind of like, and it's gonna look like this, and then it'll like it's so possible it could do this. It's gonna look so bad that nobody wants anything to do with it. Like
I mean, the worse it looks, the better, right? I mean, I'm usually very excited when we get cheap prices.
yep,
So I think
yep, yep, yep.
when you establish that psychology, I think you will love heavy sell-offs. You will just love them,
It's
and
more
one
just for
day
how
you
long
will.
it takes to get these sort of drawdowns. Like this takes months to get a fill like this, right? So if it's taking months again to get a fill like this, right? It's usually when everybody's unconvinced and mentally destroyed from it. So
This is definitely not a place where I would FOMO into longs. I just mentioned this diagonal trend line being retested. Then we have Trump later pumping straight into that event. I mean, of course, it can work out, right? But what's the risk that you're taking? To me, I think it's quite high. So I'm more of an observer.
yeah, I mean leverage plays is your own prerogative. Spot, I mean,
Yeah, I'm
don't have
talking about
if you
leverage.
don't have a plan to average in at these levels, then you won't have a plan to average in at these levels, and you're only going to want to do it when you're up here, which is ridiculous. So again, you can't pull the trigger on 30% drops. There's there's something wrong with your operations. It just it is like FOMOing into here, expecting immediate upside, and that's it. Bottoms in, bitches. See you at fucking Lambo City or whatever. That's when it gets a bit complicated. But again, yeah, you got to be able to pull the trigger at certain parts in the chart's history. Uh, that's a long hour discussion about tariffs this, tariffs that, but needed to be
Yeah.
done.
We have next week, I think, CPI. I don't think we have
CPI.
a FMC. I don't think we have an FMC
No,
was
no,
mid.
no FOMC this month. It's
Yeah,
next month.
mid month is usually. So I think that's also very important next week, especially in the midst of stagflation speculations. Should be very interesting to see what inflation is doing.
Yep. All right.
And we have the employment rate on Friday. That's also, I think, something that could be relevant to financial markets.
That's something we could watch for sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
we're out of time here, DB.
yeah.
Out of time.
Been a nice stream, Rego, as always. So
Sweet.
my pleasure talking to you and to the rest of the stream. So thank you guys for joining and for engaging in the chat. Always appreciate it. And stay safe trading today. Don't
Yep.
over-risk it.
Thank everybody for joining us, hearing our tariff schizo talk. We hope you guys have a safe trade day. Keep an eye out for headlines. Keep an eye out for volatility. It's going to get really, really wicked today. We're always one headline away from something completely changing the course of action. And again, the market's in a very emotional state right now. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what to hear, what they're going to hear. So keep that in mind. What you're trading can get pretty nasty pretty quick. Think of this as like a big FOMC day, where at any moment. Um,
Yeah.
an announcement could be made. Just think of it as the same as like an FOMC today. It's going to get nuts. If you're not comfortable trading this sort of volatility, by all means, please just stay out of it. Live to fight another day. It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. It's not a scheduled event. It's nothing that anybody knows anything about until the facts are presented. So again, if you're not on that speculative side of market movements, just do your best to try and adapt to what is said and done after the fact. Right, that's the best thing you can do for yourself. Um, yeah, if today you're not feeling comfortable, it's completely understandable. But with that being said, we won't take any more of your time. DB, always a pleasure. Chat, always a pleasure. We thank you guys for joining in every week, day in, day out. And we'll see you guys again next week, same time, same place. Yeah.
Okay. Take care, guys. Have a good day.
All right. Take care.